Hey, welcome to another edition of Ask Me Anything. I'm here with Jason and I'm Rob Jan. We're both from Dynatrace. So glad for joining us today. And we're really excited about a topic called automation without boundaries. And so this is just a really cool time for Dynatrace where we've made a lot of changes to our platform, new enhancements, new capabilities. So today we're going to be digging into that aspect of the platform, and we really want your questions. So please, welcome. And have some chats. Let us know where you're from. I know we often get a global audience, so yeah, put a little post. Hey, I'm coming in from Tokyo. I'm coming in from New Zealand. That'd be great. So I'm based in Boston, and I'll turn it over to Jason. Jason, where you coming in from?
Yeah. Hi everyone, Jason Ostrowski, Principal Solutions Engineer here at Dynatrace. I'm out of Northern Virginia, so pretty close to Washington D.C., but far enough away that you don't get the city traffic, which is kind of nice. So yeah, super excited about today. I mean, um, the the game-changing features that we've announced and that we're now enabling for our customers around automation, around DevOps automation, around auto remediation. There's so many cool use cases. So super excited for today's session.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I've been with Dynatrace actually coming up on 5 years. So I was in professional services for about 15 years, did a lot with performance engineering. When I was finishing consulting, I was doing a lot of test automation, test data automation, working with, analyzing systems. So that's what kind of my background. I work a lot with technical partners. So really what we're wanting to see is, what kind of systems you're integrating in with, how we do collaboration across teams, whether you're on the cloud ops side or the DevOps side or the network ops side, or security is a big topic too. So really these workflows around, helping communicate, as well as kind of taking some of those repetitive tasks that people are doing so that we can take the answers that Dynatrace is giving you and actually doing something with it. So just our agenda for today, just real quick, is we're going to just show you a couple concepts, explain what automation is, and really the bulk of today's session is demo. So between Jason and I, we're going to do a lot of demos, and we'll take a look at all your questions online. So I'm going to just start real quick with just a couple slides just to kind of orient everybody on what our theme is for today. And so let me just share my screen. And what we've been talking about in a series of clinics and Ask Me Anythings is talking about some of the announcements that we did at Perform, which was in February of this year. And we've kind of gone through a series of topics from analytics to the Dynatrace query language. And today we're really talking about the automation capabilities. And then we're going to be talking about buildings for apps. So definitely all these sessions are you can watch them again. They're out on YouTube. So, but today we're really talking about the workflow, and we'll demo all these capabilities. But one thing we'll talk about is really the automation topic. So, Jason, I'm going to turn it over to you to kind of talk about how we've evolved our platform and why this is so important.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about basically the automation engine within Dynatrace and how we can deliver answer-driven automation. So as you see that data coming in, whether that's through the one agent, through our extensions, our integrations with all the other hyperscalers, open source metric providers, OTel, all that data that's coming in, Dynatrace then takes that in. It kind of senses and thinks on that data, right? It stores it within the AI within Grail, which we'll talk about in a second about how that works. The AI engine looks at all that data, it baselines it, it finds anomalies, kind of thinks on all of that data. And then we want to be able to act, right? When we've got a problem ticket and we've got a root cause, we want to be able to act on that. When we say an issue with a deployment, we want to act on that. Something as simple as, I've got a report that I want to run and I want to send it out to somebody or send a problem ticket to somebody. We want to be able to act on that. And what we did with the automation engine is we made that more robust and flexible than ever and easier than ever to take the data that you have in Dynatrace and actually make actions with that. So we'll cover this in way more depth, but really it's about making those integrations more flexible, more rich, and more robust. So it's not like we're saying, with workflows, you don't have to use Ansible Tower. You don't have to use ServiceNow or Sneak or any of the ones that you're seeing there. but it's the integration with those is much richer, much easier to use, and helps get those answers and automation throughout your environment even easier than ever before. So,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
and these are all valued partners of ours. I mean, you guys out there have made investments in these various tools. So it's really trying to get the most out of those tools, but then to, right, take the answers from Dynatrace. When there's a security vulnerability detected by Dynatrace, then what do you do with that? We want to drive, investigation, perhaps. We want to notify the appropriate teams that are responsible for that. Or if you do a code deployment and the service levels are violated as a result of the performance test, or maybe you did a feature flag change and now you want to certify that it's okay to roll out to a broader audience. Those types of decisions we want to do in an automated way based on the observability data and also security data that the Dynatrace has in its platform. And so, what I'll do is just maybe talk about, because the heart of this and what we're going to, you'll see more and more in Dynatrace, the platform is based on a new data store technology. And maybe, Jace, you want to collaborate a bit on what Grail is and why it's a game changer for us.
Yeah. So we saw kind of the big challenges of, the amount of data and the complexity of the data and really how do we drive answers and automation from that data? And what we realized was that we needed to make a totally new way of storing that data, of getting answers out of that data. And that's what we did with Grail. So we built this from the ground up, and it's at the core of the Dynatrace platform. What Grail is our causational data lakehouse. Basically, we found a way to store all of the observability data and security data and business data that you're capturing with Dynatrace in context. And then we use a massive parallel processing engine to get answers out of that data super, super quickly.
That's
So,
right. Yeah, exactly right. I mean, so this is where we see
yeah.
a lot of teams, they may have it could be open source tools. It could be a combination of commercial tools, but there's often, 10 to 15 individual observability tools that don't integrate with each other, right? You may have a log analysis tool, but how do I get the metrics, from the user experience, in an easy way to go connect that to, what's happening in the logs. And so what you'll see, and we won't get in details too much of this, but just when you hear the word DQL, that is the Dynatrace query language, which is really what you're, as a user, you're working with. So Grail is sort of behind the scenes. That's the guts of it. That's how we can do, we have customers now doing 10 terabytes a day of log ingest, where Grail really opened up a scale and the ability to store data and query data on the fly through Dynatrace query language. And so this is a very easy to understand, selecting data, filtering data, summarizing data. The stuff in the middle here where we're dynamically, schema on read is the fancy word we call it, but it's really, if I have a JSON structured data, I don't have to define these attributes on front. I can do it on the fly, all through the power of a query. And that's kind of what you're seeing here. I don't think you want to add anything to that, Jace, but
Just say that all the data that is stored within Grail is accessible via DQL. So it makes it really easy to do any ad hoc analytics, on read parsing, all of that to get answers out of that data. So like we'll show in the workflows today, we're going to be running some DQL. We wanted to make sure that you're comfortable with that. But really it's a way that we can extract information out of that data.
Right. And that's going to be, what's nice. I mean, this is what, when you think about Dynatrace, it truly is a platform. So, when we have a Grail data store, all the observability data is in one place. All this data could be accessed with the Dynatrace query language, and the Dynatrace query language is now, throughout the product. So as we show the workflows where I want to perform a DQL query as a step within a workflow, I can do that. If I want to have a workflow triggered off of event data that's stored in, it would be accessed through the DQL definition. So you're going to see that all the dashboard tiles are based on the DQL. So it really is a platform, built on the foundation of Grail and DQL. And so here's the workflow, and Jason's going to demo all this, but just as a quickie, this is a really new capability as part of the Dynatrace platform now, to do what you see here, have graphical drag and drop tasks, being able to control conditions, have, and what Dynatrace is building is a library of pre-built actions. Actions can be extended by partners and customers. You can build your own actions for reuse. So this is really what what the topic of today is. And so Jason's going to demo all this. But let me just walk through, a couple of use cases, and maybe Jason, we'll alternate here. So go ahead. You want to talk about,
Sure.
this one first?
Sure. So with the workflow engine, a lot of it is we have the data within Dynatrace. And when there's maybe a problem ticket, or maybe when we want to auto resolve things, it's so much easier to have the workflow and the logic within Dynatrace, because we can ask questions easily. We can say, hey, should I resize this disk? Okay, should I scale it up? Should I scale it down? What should I actually do with that? And that's exactly what we're doing here within this workflow, right? We're just basically on a fixed time, on a schedule, checking our EBS volume and seeing, should we scale up or should we scale down, to optimize our storage, optimize our costs. And then once that's actually done, doing the task, making, validating that that's working properly, and then notifying the teams that that's actually been done. So as easy as, restarting a process or resizing a disk or scaling up, scaling down, we can do that with the workflow automations.
Exactly. Yeah. And then similarly, because Dynatrace does real-time vulnerability protection, we can see, and if you could see it really small, that there was a security event that was taking place that, something got picked up on the code real time. So this was really a runtime vulnerability that was detected, and and that becomes the start of a workflow. So these triggers are coming from event. One of the options is an event. Jason will show the other types, but this could be something similar, like, hey, there was a vulnerability detected. I need to gather some more details. I want to, bring this in open tickets. In this case, this looks like a Jira, as well as sending it on a Slack message. So that's another example. And I'll do this one, Jason, then I'll turn it back to you. But
Sure.
we're actually going to demo this feature called site reliability automation. So part of the Dynatrace platform, we had a whole session on on applications. That's part of the application engine of Dynatrace. But one of the apps that Dynatrace built was this site reliability guardian. So it's for validating service levels upon release, or to make release decisions. And we're actually going to demo that one today. And it can be used in cases like progressive delivery to augment decision making that are triggered by workflows to make decisions around what's happening with your code. And then maybe Jason, you want to talk about this one, because this is also kind of exciting, because we're very, very much attuned to cloud native technologies, and we want to talk
Yeah. And really what we're doing is, we have the UI that's really easy to get up and running on these workflows. You can just do drag and drop. You can, reuse little sections of those. You've got the tasks that we're building, but really we want to be able to do this all as code, because we want it to be repeatable. We want to be able to, scale it out for multiple different services or applications. So all of the workflow engine is going to be available as code. So you can go and, build your workflows, just straight up script the whole thing out, right? And then reuse those, share those, version control, all that good stuff. So, today we're going to show mostly in the UI editing, all of that, but yeah, but that's available as full code to customize to your heart's content.
Right. Exactly. So I'm going to stop sharing. So now enough slides, demo time. So Jason, take it away with showing the environment, and we'll walk through some of the workflows and
Yeah, sounds good. So as we go into this, again, if you have any questions, feel free to pop those in the chat. I actually see tons of people coming from across the world, so this is awesome. Super cool to see everybody coming in from many different locations. So yeah, so keep it interactive. Keep those questions coming in. As I come into Dynatrace, the first thing I'm kind of greeted with is the launcher of the platform. So it gives us some good tips on, how do I get into the data within Dynatrace? How do I understand the data with the Smartscape? Today, we're actually going to go through and go automate and integrate and open up the actual workflows. When I go to that, we get into our workflow engine where we have all the examples that have been shared with us, and we can actually kick off a new workflow. Now, a workflow starts with some sort of trigger, right? We don't just start running stuff, but we actually have something to prompt it to actually start the execution of a workflow. So that could be anything from as simple as on demand, right? I hit the run button, or I've got an API command, or here's just showing a curl that kicks off that workflow. I could swap that out. I could change that trigger for maybe a schedule, right? Maybe I've got a report that I want to be triggered every morning at 9 a.m. Right? I can do that. I can have this workflow to get triggered on a schedule. We've got time intervals, we've got cron schedules. So anything you're kind of used to for setting up those schedules, you can do that as well. And we can do actually off of event triggers. So if you think about the AI engine within Dynatrace, it's constantly looking at the entire environment, the health, the performance, and then detecting anomalies within those within your environment. When one of those anomalies exists, Dynatrace creates a problem ticket, and that can actually be and actually finds the root cause for you, which is super powerful. But you can actually drive these workflows from those problem tickets as well. So that's that Davis problem trigger, right? Whenever there's a problem within Dynatrace that's detected by Davis, our AI engine, it actually kicks off one of these workflows. So we can do that as well, or any event, right? A custom event, a deployment event, anything that's kind of an event that's coming into Dynatrace, we'll see that as well and can kick off those. So I'll go as just a super simple example, right? Let's just run this on demand. I hit run, or I hit a API. Then I go and add another task to it. And you can add multiple tasks, one after another, or you can kind of do the forked workflow, saying if this happens, do that. If that happens, do that, right? But here I'm just got, a task, and then it shows me all the available actions that I can run. So I can do something like, execute a Dynatrace query language query, right? If I want to run a report, or, fetch my logs, fetch my error logs, I can do that just by simply running Dynatrace query language query right within there. I could add a different task, right? I could run any JavaScript code within the Dynatrace platform. Makes it super, super powerful, super easy to customize any use case. I could make an HTTP request, do a webhook, or hit an external service. You can do all that. We also have many integrations that we're building out here. So a few that we're showing today, we've got Jira, so you can create an issue, comment on the issue, change the assignee, maybe about prioritization. You can do ownership within Dynatrace, see who owns that specific specific service or specific entity. Make sure that they're notified appropriately. We've got MS Teams integration coming soon there, so something that's on the horizon. And then we've also got the Site Reliability Guardian in Slack for workflows. So we'll dig into those in a lot more depth during our demos here. So let's get kicked off with just a simple workflow, right? Maybe we want to go through and execute a query to look at maybe the problems that are running within my environment. So with that, I can go through and just grab any of my Dynatrace query language queries. This one, I'm actually looking at the events that have happened in the last 14 days, like those problem tickets, and then counting those, because I just want to know how many problems have happened in my environment in the last 2 weeks, right? Maybe I'm tracking that out over time, or keeping an eye on that. Then from that, I don't want to just get the results of it. I could do that anywhere else in the Dynatrace platform. I want to actually do something about this, right? I want to send this to Slack so I can get notified of that proactively. I could run this on a schedule, and maybe every morning it tells me how many problem tickets I had. So with that, I just use the Slack integration we have there. I've got a demo Slack workspace that I've got there. I'm just going to pick one of my channels in there, and then I've got to give it a message. If I just went here and did, hello world, when this executes, it's going to do hello world. But I want to pass the results from that previous DQL into here and do a little bit of formatting so it looks nice. So in that case, what I'll do is I'll bring this guy in, which basically is just taking the results from that previous step and then taking the count of those problems and sending it over via Slack. So super simple. Just, run a query and then actually, give me the results for that in Slack. So I'm going to hit run here. It actually saves the workflow, executes the query. So we're waiting on that right now. And then it sends that to my Slack. And what I can do, I got to share out my Slack real quick.
Oh, you stopped sharing, Jason.
Yeah, I had to swap out.
No,
there we go. Cool. And now it looks, and I see my total problem notifications count of 200. So pretty simple just to get up and running and, go from I've got a query to here's the actual results within one of my integrations, like within Slack.
Right. And that just kind of showed you how easy it was, because that oftentimes that may just be what happens. There's something happening in your environment, like a problem. You just want to be quickly notified about it. So he was doing a, kind of an on-demand workflow. But when there's like we mentioned, when there's an event happening in Dynatrace, whether that's a security event, a Dynatrace problem event, then there's also a lot of custom events. We have a whole area called business events in Dynatrace, which could be representing anything from code deployments to, like, if it's a business application, like there could be a high trading volume for a particular user, and that may need to go to a compliance team to say, hey, start some sort of notification for compliance to do something. So it's really, and the idea here is that all these steps within the workflow, Dynatrace isn't trying to do everything. Dynatrace is not trying to be the deployment tool, but we want to help take the data and quickly inform those tools. So a lot of times we see a lot of very fragile code going between a system to a custom script to something else, back to a custom script. And so there's a lot of, spaghetti code out there, between Python and Lambda functions, just trying to integrate things together. So what we're offering with this solution is not like this is the everything tool, but this is a way to, we have the data natively in Dynatrace, either, from an event, or we need to pull data from logs or pull some topology information. I'll show you in a minute around ownership information. So if we have all that data in Dynatrace, we can now quickly compile, assess, do some level of logic, and then route it to the appropriate tool. Or maybe if it's really quick, like, hey, I just want to send a Slack message, I don't need to go to something else to send a Slack message. I could just go right to Slack and send it. Or if I just want to open up a Jira ticket or a ServiceNow ticket, then let's do that with this augmented sort of logic. And then maybe Jason, if you want to show them real quick, click on the maybe a workflow where you can show the execution history. Because what happens with every workflow that takes place, it is captured. Execute. Yeah, there you go. So right here, you can see every time. I'm sorry. Here, click enter workflow. Maybe not that one because you haven't run it.
When you go to so executions, these are all the executions that I've run. Right. So
that same workflow?
It's showing me a bunch of my untitled workflows that I was working before.
Okay.
So this is the whole execution history, but you can go through and select a specific workflow, like the problem type by count. And then here's the ones that I was running just last night.
If you click on it, click on it and then show them that all the details and results. Like if you click on the second square, or one you have the log.
You've got the full execution log. So it shows you like when that was executed. And then you can show the actual results.
Right. So you really have this whole history of everything that took place. So if there was like, hey, did this happen? Who did it go to? Or you're troubleshooting something, you could see, okay, what were all the inputs and outputs of every single execution of a workflow. And that's, just a feature, so that's
Yeah.
helpful. So if you have a homegrown
Yeah.
script, you may be building your own logging mechanism or something, but here that's just sort of built in, which helps in debugging and building out a new workflow, but also as it's executing, you can see the history, especially if something's triggered by events, it's just waiting for an event to take place. So that you can look back and say, all right, this got triggered 50 times during the night or something like that.
Yep.
Yep.
And kind of want to add on to that is that like the data that's within Dynatrace is fully accessible now. We talk a little bit about Grail. We talk a little bit about, there's these new data types that are on Dynatrace. But, really what we're saying is that anything from the events that are coming in to, business analytics, biz events, traces, metrics, logs, all of this stuff is queryable, right? And so, for my use case, like I may ad hoc go in and look at, the problems that have happened over time, sort them out by categories or sort them out by different event types to try to kind of analyze what problems are we having frequently within Dynatrace, maybe which ones we want to, keep track of and report on, which ones we want to fix, right? Which kind of are areas for biggest performance improvements. And then maybe we want to set that up as a workflow, as a report, right? Or maybe we want to, go drive automation off of that. We see there's a lot of availability issues. We may want to just go restart things. We can do that. We can take that information that Dynatrace is capturing and is queryable through the Dynatrace query language, and then, drive those workflows off of those. So that's kind of a little bit kind of, rounding it all out is that, because we have the data, because we know, deep root cause analysis, we know how everything's connected, we know the history of deployment events and changes, we can really drive answer-driven automation within the Dynatrace platform off of that.
Right. Yeah, and maybe I can show, guys, please, ask us some questions along the way. I mean, we're happy to answer them and show you things if you want a refresher on a particular feature. But we did want to, just kind of walk through the capabilities, because it's the use cases that, because this is relatively new for Dynatrace, this is where we need your input. Like what type of things come to mind as we show you what is possible? What are the building blocks within workflows? It's going to open up a lot of new things, and it's really, that's the feedback we want. Like, oh, could I do this? Could I do that? Like, oh, I work with such a tool, or whatever. That's great feedback, because Jason's on the pre-sale side. He works with a lot of customers that are trying POCs out. I'm on the partnership side, where I work with a lot of the partners that we integrate with, but we both regularly talk to research and development and give them feedback to help with the roadmap of things that they're building.
So one question while you're getting shared out, Rob, one question that came in from Dane is, can you use audit events in these workflows, or audit logs within these workflows? And so as long as the data is captured within Dynatrace, so if you're capturing audit logs within Dynatrace, via our one agent or ingest via API or Logstash or FluentD or anything like that, as long as you're ingesting that information to Dynatrace, yes, right, you can use audit logs within those workflows. Or if it's something like looking at the Dynatrace audit logs within the Dynatrace platform and then notifying on that, those are accessible as well, right? So you can actually drive automation off those as well. Can those audit logs be used to create workflows for cybersecurity analysis? I actually think, Rob, we kind of showed a little bit of an example about routing. And you could definitely do that, right? You could go say, if you see this, create a Jira ticket, or go do deeper analysis on that with XYZ team, right? Do that routing, do that notification, and additional analysis. And even the Dynatrace audit logs, those are also accessible. So I mean, really, this kind of the sky's the limit, because as long as it's within an observability signal that Dynatrace is capturing, or it's accessible via the Dynatrace API, or it's JavaScript or an API you can call and ingest that data, like you can run a workflow off of it. So
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah, a lot of possibilities.
I'll show you an example. I don't know if it's the example, but
Okay.
I will certainly show, you know, what I can do here. So in Dynatrace, what might happen is like I'm in a notebook. So a lot of times there could be some work where, right, you're investigating you know, something like this is an error log, but just maybe pretend this is a security related problem. And you know, because that sorry, shrink this. But what we have here is just change this to, I like a table view, but this is what we have in our, like this log. So we're saying select logs, you know, that have an error, you know, and you can see this is the log message and the content. And I might want to, you know, further summarize this data, sorry, and say, you know, because what happens in Dynatrace with the query language, you can say, all right, give me a count by these hosts, right? So here is, you know, hosts that have logs, you know, a certain error count. So this is a totally made up example, but you can see there's a lot of errors and maybe some more filters could be done to refine this. But so this kind of analysis, you could say, hey, these are my problematic logs that I see in these hosts, and I want to be maybe notified anytime that I see something like that happening. So what you could do in a workflow is, you know, we could, in this case, I have the workflow set up where it's like, all right, trigger this manually, but we could build a trigger to say, look for logs that are having this criteria, and then I want to start a workflow. So this is kind of a really kind of made up workflow to show you different capabilities. But here I've got a step that's using that same query to get my data. And like Jason just showed, I may want to build a Slack message that just loops through. You can see here, like we can customize that message to say loop through those logs, pulling the values out of the results of this previous step. I could also, and this is another type of step you can do, this is all TypeScript, and Dynatrace has SDKs to go out after all the data that's in Dynatrace, whether it's the config, whether it's topology data, whether it's metrics, whether it's logs. You can write code to go do things. So here you can see I'm fetching, you know, first identifying, you know, the things that were identified in the previous step. I'm basically looping through those, and then I'm constructing a payload with these results, and I'm just, in this case, pushing it out to console out. But then I could also send that output to, in this case, just a website. So one way I can send it out to this webhook site where I can see these results. I'm just pushing the results out. Or just imagine this could have been something like a third-party tool, or it could have been a Lambda function where I want to take these results and do something. Or I could take the results again and write my own code to do something. So here I'm like just another way using the TypeScript code to build up my thing, build up my custom payload, go ahead and send it out. I can also create a Jira ticket as an example, and I'll run this thing so you can see it in action. So it's going to do multiple things, as you can see. But here I'm, you know, I can build a connection to my Jira environment. I can have different Jira projects. I can, you know, associate it with an issue type. I can have it automatically signed. I can build my summary, build my results. And let's just go ahead and run this so you can see what happens. But this kind of thing where I want to, you know, be driven by some sort of data happening and do different things with it. So here I've got my top 10 logs, and now I'm sending out a Slack message, right? And this is where it's going to go to my Slack environment, which is here. So here it just sent that out 11:36 my time, 11:36 my time. So that just happened. And then here it also did a Slack notification that it made a Jira ticket. So if I open up my Jira environment, it maybe look kind of a horrible looking message, but here errors and logs, here's some results. But imagine if you formatted that. So here, you know, all through that automation workflow, we were doing multiple things, right? And then if I go out to this this particular website, I think I have webhook site, this one, just to kind of show you that this is just a way to sort of proxy out and see, probably the wrong URL, this one. I'll get the right URL, but anyway, let me edit the workflow. I'll get it this way. Another way I get it. So if this is where it sent it. It just, and all this was just for demonstration purposes to show that you can invoke a, come on, load up. All right, it's not wanting to load up, but this webhook site is a way to kind of proxy and see, you know, this sort of output here. So another kind of example, just to kind of pivot a little bit, we were talking about this site reliability Guardian app. And so one feature of Dynatrace is this new app called Site Reliability Guardian. And what we've made just a little sidebar on this is, there's what we're trying to do in either the validation of a release, or maybe before you run deploy some code, you run a performance test, you want to check certain characteristics in an automated way to make a decision on whether the code gets promoted. Maybe there's a canary release and you want to roll it out. So these are all things that you might manually do. So what we're seeing with automation is we have the data in Dynatrace, but we want to automatically score that. So if we look at the query behind something here, this is saying, and again, this is all that DQL that we were talking about before, like look at this log, parse out this JSON, pull out these attributes, look for these failure messages. And so for my failure rate, you can see this is the real power. I'm calculating multiple things here. I'm getting counts, filtering, I'm establishing a failure rate, all with a query. Nothing was indexed, nothing was predefined. You just do it straight up on this particular log source, and that becomes your basis. So I want to have a criteria that says, all right, if failures are greater than 20%, that's going to be a fail. If I have higher than 18%, that's a warning. So in this case, we got 39 in this last case. So I missed the target. That particular metric failed. We can have, here's a security vulnerabilities, same thing. So this is kind of what the security vulnerability query looks like, event kind security problem, event type vulnerability, it's not resolved yet. Did I get a count? So this is basically saying, for this time frame, were there any security vulnerabilities that were detected that haven't been closed? Or I could good. Sorry.
So basically any of the data within Dynatrace, right? Whether it's coming from, application security or logs or metrics, basically what we're doing is we're setting up SLOs and SLIs for those. What are our success criteria? What is good for this service? And then doing an evaluation against it. And because we've got the DQL, we can just write this stuff on the fly. It's super quick for us to go and look and see, right, do we have any vulnerabilities? Like I think you're about to show, like within business events, right? Like, do we have any failed checkouts or any 400 errors, right?
Yeah.
There's just so much flexibility that you have. And the Guardian is really about, validation and evaluation of my service. Is this good or not? And then, kind of the next step is driving workflows from that, right?
Exactly. So here what you have is say you have 4 objectives, right? So that's the real, so there's this Guardian for carts, this is an arbitrary name, but this carts service, has 4 objectives. And and if we were to run it, so we can run it on the fly. So you can see the idea is that you run it for a time frame. This could also be, when we run it from a workflow, that time range would be dynamically set. So if I ran a performance test for 15 minutes, it could set the start and stop time, for which to evaluate this. So this is now going out, gathering the data from each of these objectives for the time frame you specified. You can see here it's running. All right. And so it looked like it's now 11:54, since I just ran it. That's a good time check. We got 20 minutes to our webinar, but, so it just ran, and you can see same thing. All of these guys, had the same result. They failed. But what we want to do with that is to put that in a workflow. So the way it gets pieced together is I may have one of these events, like I have a custom deployment event. And then what I want to do is run one of these Guardians. So in this case, I'm running my demo app Guardian. So you can see it, once installed in my environment, the demo app Guardian. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about this, but we can also, for this app, Dynatrace, and I'll maybe come back to this, but has the ability to know who is the owner of this particular service or host or process, and establish contact detail information. So I have another pre-built step to say, all right, get the owners for that service. And contacts can be things like, what's their Slack channel? What's their Teams channel? What's the Jira ticket that may be associated with that team? And so in this case, it's Slack. So now when I do my criteria, I want to construct my payload for my Slack message. which is going to say, if it passed, give a green circle, it passed as a result of this. So the result run validation status is referring to the Guardian, which I happen to call run validation results. So it should be pass or fail or whatever. And then I could build a hyperlink back to the results of the Guardian. And then I want to send it out where? To the contact details Slack channel. And if they don't have a Slack channel, send it to the default Slack channel in my case. So if I run this now, let's just go ahead and actually, I'll show you how kind of a cool way. This is a demo on the fly. So what I did is I built a GitHub. I don't know if you guys use GitHub, but this could be Jenkins. It could be GitLab. It could be any CI/CD tool you may have. This was just for a demo. But I wrote a pipeline script that just sort of fakes out building the code, fakes out my deployment. And then there's a Dynatrace wrote a GitHub action, which is sort of a simple way to do sending in a deployment event, and I can pass in this metadata with it. So when I run it, you'll see what I'm doing. So if I run it here, this normally would be, I'm manually triggering this workflow, but imagine typically what happens is a developer writes code, checks it in, creates a pull request. That pull request gets approved. That may start the build and deployment process. So this is sort of a faked out workflow that really was pretending I'm building, deploying, and then I'm sending out my Dynatrace event. So this data now got filled in. So I'm tagging this particular service I'm interested in. The deployment's going to have this data in it. So then over on Dynatrace, what it should have done, if I did my demo right, I go to executions 25 seconds ago. There you go. Boom. It worked. So what it did is it ran our Guardian. It got the owners. And if I go to my Slack channel, it said here. So now it did the results of my my Guardian here. So it did my last validation failed. And this was the output message. If I do show results, it can be a hyperlink back to that Guardian, which was the one I just did right here, 1144. And so this is, in this case, this was a different Guardian, but I only had one error, one check for this, but it failed. So it was like looking for errors. So that kind of mechanism is kind of that demo of incorporating a Dynatrace application combined with these other kind of steps to help with a release decision. So that result would allow you to say, hey, I deployed my code. With some traffic, what were the service level objectives? Were they passing or failing? And again, you can imagine more sophisticated things where you check for the status programmatically, and maybe this triggers the next flow to promote it to the next environment, or maybe tickets are being updated along the way to do an automated way with those results. So yeah, that's kind of another example. And so the Site Reliability Guardian is definitely we've had specific topics and sessions on that. So definitely Andy Grabner and has done some sessions on that. Our product management team has done some great demos on that. So this is building up upon a project which was in the CNCF, which is Dynatrace was a huge starter, and we learned a lot from you guys that tried the Captain open source project. It just started as a commercialized kind of flavor called cloud automation. And so now that the concepts and the use cases are all realized and now in the core platform in the form of the Site Reliability Guardian. So Jason, I don't know if you had anything to add to that.
No, I mean, it's super exciting to be able to do this all kind of natively within Dynatrace and be able to drive automation, that easily and quickly.
Right.
One question that just came into the chat is the SRE Guardian an evolution of cloud automation?
Yeah, I would say yes, it's an evolution in the sense that, one of the biggest things that our customers found is that quality gate feature. I mean, I think Captain was very ambitious, as it was really like a platform in of itself, where it had a vision of orchestration and cloud, in a cloud, not just a cloud native environment, but really any environment. But really the use case that people wanted was like, I want to gather metrics from different sources and be able to automatically score it. And so in that sense, yes, it's an evolution. And now it's now powered by, as you can see, it's like in part of the App Engine framework. It's now a pre-built app and a workflow, and it opens up a lot of new use cases. And it's all powered by DQL. So instead of how projects were defined in Captain and the way you had to set up SLOs and SLIs, and there's a lot of detail on that, but it's now very simple. So as you saw, like you can make an objective, you just put in standard DQL, you set your criteria, you have one-to-many objectives. And what's happening with that SRE app is more enhancements are coming. So some of the features like historical trends, build over build is coming. What we're building is some wizards to help build things like the standard 4 golden signals metrics. So a lot of times people are building around throughput and response time and errors, which are these standard metrics that often people use as at least the foundation of a framework. And then all of this, as Jason was saying, is part of our configuration as code framework. So Dynatrace is now, if you saw that Dynatrace did have an open source version called Monaco, but now in the core product, and maybe John Rocker or whoever's on helping us can post that link. There's some great blogs. There's actually some webinars around. We like to call it configuration as code, not just monitoring as code, because any of the configurations that's part of what we call settings 2.0 or the settings framework of Dynatrace will be configurable through this framework where you define projects, the settings, you parameterize inputs, and that could drive anything from synthetic monitors to dashboards to alerting rules to the workflows. Now with the site reliability guardians, and the idea is that is how you're following a GitOps mindset, right? You're checking code in, it lives side by side with the code, perhaps, where things are in sync. So as you're going from a non-prod environment to a production environment, your configuration is being validated and tested along the way. You have full auditing, you have approvals, and and how things get applied in your environment. We don't want people going into the settings UI and making configuration changes, because it's difficult to control that. We do have a full audit of that information, but it's much more auditable and more standard to say, check the code in, do an approval in a code pipeline, apply that config. You can have much more control and integration into your standard stuff that you do within the DevOps teams. One thing I'll just mention, just as a one thing I'd like to show a bit, just as another tie-in to this feature. You saw me show a second ago the ability to grab ownership information. So I just want to highlight that real quick, just as a parting thought for us. This is an area around ownership. So what does ownership mean? So ownership is those teams that may be responsible for releasing the code, approving the code, supporting the code. Could be a security ops team, it could be a compliance team. So it falls along the areas around when people typically think about ownership with incident management. Who's the team responsible for this particular service? Or as you can see here, if you broaden it into like who cares about the effect of my change, like I just want to be made aware of it, or I'm an architect, or maybe I'm a business owner, I want to be aware that things are happening. And then same thing with here, like who we need to collaborate on things that are a problem. So here's an example. This is the security vulnerability solution area within Dynatrace. So here this is showing a log4shell problem, which is kind of the big one that's been out in the industry, probably last, was it 6 months ago, Jason, that was that when that hit? But it was really big in our
a while, yeah.
but it's still just very pervasive out there. So even though it got the attention, it's still out in a lot of code. So we want to see the runtime detection of that particular problem. And what Dynatrace is doing within this solution is taking the topology data and saying, hey, what process groups are affected? Like how widespread is this problem? And so we don't have time to get into all the details of this, but really it's about evaluating not just the standard security vulnerability risk, but we apply, because you see some heuristics on top, like is this a public internet exposed service? Is it talking to data, etc.? So we do a great risk score, but then who do we tell? Like who cares, right? Someone's going to care. So these types of I won't read these to you, but these are the types of things that you do care about, like who's responsible, where do I store this stuff? Who do I tell? What channel does someone want to be communicated on? And so this is also an area that Dynatrace hasn't played, because we often pushed an alert to somebody else and then it was really up to that other tool. But again, we see there's a lot of do-it-yourself tools. So what we're trying to do is give an option, so it's not required, but it's an option to now to put some of that, responsibilities and team details. How do they want to be contacted in Dynatrace, so that you can use it in the case of workflows, or go in the UI and to see who may be responsible. And so we have a new set of ways to associate that team now with the topology data within Dynatrace.
Yeah, and what I was just wanted to mention is we're just trying to make it easier. Like, all of this is just trying to make everything within Dynatrace and everything within your environment easier. Whether it's doing reporting and ownership of a specific vulnerability, whether it's remediating something or rolling back a deployment, like all of this is in an effort to make it easier, make your lives easier. And so when you see things like, we want to do reporting escalation, like, it's instead of having to get this big list of vulnerabilities and try to figure out like who's responsible for it and who should I, should I create a Jira ticket? Who should I give that to? Like, we can do that all within Dynatrace now.
Right. And I'll just pull that up real quick. So I have a very simple setup, but here you can see in the settings, you may make a team, in this case, I call the demo team. And so what we have, right now, and this is sort of just as a starting point, and we're going to be adding more options to customize these responsibilities. But we've basically give you some toggles to say, I'm this particular team may be responsible for these, functions at a high level. But then you can start to say, what is the contact information for this particular team? And you could have many, right? So I could say, oh, they do email, they do Jira. So we're going to be adding more ways to contact people in here. But this team, in this case, is like, I have Slack. My channel is the workflow demo channel. That's what I care about. And so if I was to go into, posts, to show you where it shows up in the pages within Dynatrace, I'm just going to pick a random one here. So this is the host page in Dynatrace. So built into the product is this ownership tab. And so any entity, whether it's a service or a host, I could come in here and say, all right, here's my demo team, right? They're basically, they're the development responsibilities now for this. So we could do this all through manually UI, but again, we don't want to do it all manually through the UI. This would typically be done through, configuration as code, as well as rules, putting, there's different techniques to sort of do this at scale. But for demo, you can see I manually added that team associated with this entity. So when I went back to that workflow, if I go back to that workflow demo, and we're running out of time, what it was doing was, sorry, wrong one. Let's say reliability guardian. So when I got the owners, what it was doing was, this is a pre-built step, right? So if I'll just kind of, this is a pre-built step. So if I was to go in here, let me just, what you'll see is I have a, get owners step. And that's what I did here. So you're picking an option like, oh, what option? So remember I had development. I want the development team. And then this could be an expression for my entities. So if I look at the one that I just built called Get Owners, the input was coming from the event for this workflow, looking for the Dynatrace entity service value. So, it's not hard coded, it's coming in from the event data. So if I was to save this, look at my executions that we just did a second ago, look at the event parameters from my last execution, you can see I sent in that simulated deployment event. I passed in the tags that I wanted to match to, and then it matched a given, if I can see my screen here, down here, there should be an entity ID. Where did it go? Here it is, entity service. Yeah. So here, when the event came in, based on the tags, it matched it to this particular service. And so now that service, unique entity ID then becomes the input to get me the owners for that particular entity. And then now it has it. And then the next step is like, all right, now that you got the owner, which is basically the team, interrogate the team and say, what information about that team do I want? Oh, I want the Slack channel for that team. That's what this step does. So here it's saying, get me get the owners here, and I want to filter out, the Slack channel within that team. And then with that, I can now send a message in the Slack channel. I think I showed this before, but now it'll kind of make more sense. But now it's like, all right, for those contact details, the result is like a JSON object. So then it's like, get me the Slack channel value within the results of this contact details output. So hopefully that made sense. But that's just kind of showing you that kind of flavor of, you can drive a way to drive who gets the message in a dynamic way.
Yep.
So I think we're almost out of time. This has been a lot of fun. So
yeah, this has been a lot of fun.
We'll just kind of do a quick recap, but this is just one of many in a series. All these types of sessions are still available also on YouTube. You can watch them. You can register for upcoming ones to see it live so that you can interact with us with some questions. And this is the best way to give us feedback. I know, thank you for all your questions, but this is the community website. If you're doing a trial or you're a customer, or you can just register to be part of the community and give us your feedback. This is all of our art research development product managers actively, watch this, look for your feedback, interact with you. So kind of your takeaway would be to, share some stuff, this way. So I don't know, Jace, if you want to, I guess that's the end of the hour here, but parting thoughts.
Yeah, really. I'm really excited for all of the answer-driven automation our customers can now do within the Dynatrace platform. I've got all the use cases that I have been working with my customers on, but I think, just in a couple, months from now, I'll see all the creativity and all the cool use cases coming in. And that's what I'm super excited for, right? It's not just what I think is cool, but what everybody else thinks is cool. Yeah. So that's what I'm excited about.
Exactly.
We're
at a lot of physical events. So like if you all, globally, Dynatrace is going to quite a few events. So definitely, get out and about, see us at some conferences, you go look at the event site for Dynatrace, but that's a good way to interact in person with us if you're already at some show, throughout the year. But definitely, Jason and I are available. You're welcome to hit us up on LinkedIn, reach out to us, use the community channel. But yeah, this is going to be big. I mean, Dynatrace, if you look at our website, it's analytics and automation. So think of analytics and automation equals Dynatrace. And so now we just sort of showing you some stuff. So thank you so much for attending today. Appreciate all the questions. Sorry we didn't get to all of them. We'll try to go back on LinkedIn and respond to some of you guys. But thank you for your time. I think we're at the top of the hour. So we're going to have to pull the plug. So
yeah. Thanks, everyone.
Till next time. Yep. Thanks, Jason.
Yeah. Thanks, Rob.